All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however and whenever you are joining us, welcome. This is my childhood home. We're on remote all this week as I've come back to Washington, D.C. Yes, this home filled with shame and regret on my part, really. I, in every room, see different locations from which I was begging for to use the car. That's what I really, that's what lives with me, you know. But this is this home is filled with books. You see all the books behind. This is like a fraction of the books in this house. It's crazy. It's like the Library of Congress here. But anyway, this is Washington, D.C., and thank you for being here. You are, well, the show shouldn't be different in any other way except for the fact that I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. all week. Kim is with us, and good morning to Kim.
Good morning.
And Tony is with us, and good morning to Tony. Yeah. We have a lot to do today. David Cay Johnston joins us in the 11 o'clock hour, and we're going to talk about Putin and him going broke. So, there was something that my folks pointed out to me. I'm here in the home of my parents. My mom is turning 93 the day after tomorrow. My dad is turning 93 in July. And you can imagine it's quite an event. And it's also something you feel very lucky about. But my parents, I shouldn't say but, and my parents were listening to the show yesterday. Since it's being done from their home, they are incentivized to watch a bit. And they asked, what question? Why didn't you do this certain story or mention this one thing, they asked. And you think about their generation, and you think about what yesterday was, and this is the thing to which they were referring. VE Day was yesterday. Yeah. The official end of World War II, you know, where victory in Europe.
I also wondered why you didn't talk about that. You're very remiss. I thought, I don't know, he's talking about the coronation and not VE Day? I don't understand.
Really. And, you know, if only you'd had a microphone. But it is wild that they made the point. They said, don't feel bad. Nobody mentioned it. None of the network newscasts mentioned it. It was like this thing and this day that was at the time of World War II, of course, celebrated. And also within Europe, it's still very much celebrated. There is an odd way that history proclaims something as unforgettable and then forgets it. You have to keep these stories and histories alive. Anyway, VE Day, right? It was the end of World War II in Europe.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, something interesting is that most of the world, or the Allies, celebrate the end or the victory in Europe on May 8th. But apparently at the signing of the documents, the Russian representative got in trouble with Stalin because he wasn't supposed to sign. He didn't have authorization. It wasn't right, something bad. And so they said no. They had a second ceremony the next day. And so in Russia, they mark it as May 9th today. So really, we're not late. We're just celebrating it in the whole Russian thing. Yeah.
That's terrific. I was unaware. And I appreciate that very much. The other side. Yeah. I actually was told last night by my mother that her uncles fought and saw a lot of pretty brutal action in World War II. Purple Heart I think there were a couple of Purple Hearts in her family, a Bronze Star, French Legion of Honor.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, shout out to everybody whose relatives were involved in World War II. And
My grandfather fought.
yeah, there you go. Right. It was
He
that
was,
generation.
I think it's interesting that his family came from Germany. His father immigrated to the United States from Germany. And so his family was German speaking and in the home. But and fought for Germany in World War One.
Right.
But then came to America, and he goes to war fighting for the US as a German translator.
Oh,
So
that is a
yeah,
wild story.
yeah,
That really is. You know, Schwarzenegger talks about the fact that his dad was a Nazi,
yeah.
you know, um, and he hates the fact that his dad was a Nazi, and he hates the fact that his father was sucked into that way of thinking and that service. And he speaks of that in today's America because he feels that there are many of the same strains existing in today's America that existed in Nazi Germany and across Europe at the time of his dad's conversion into Nazism. So, anyway,
I think
uh,
that's really interesting when he talks about that because it's like who better to speak about that hate and what happens when you get swallowed up and sucked up by that ugliness than someone who saw their parent descend right into it.
yeah. Anyway, that's VE Day. Sting me. Let's get started, Tony. Give me something to.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There is news out of the city. There is news out of government. There's news out of Texas. I'll get to all of it. David Cay Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner in the 11 o'clock hour. We'll talk about Russia, as I was mentioning before. The next business to leave San Francisco has announced it will be them, and that's T-Mobile. They're saying we want out. They're saying a few things. They're speaking to the fact that San Francisco changed, and now their major retail establishment, their flagship retailer, is out. The decision by the telecoms giant to shutter its premises in Union Square follows similar announcements from Saks and Nordstrom. T-Mobile said the closure of its two-level, 17,000 square foot building in the heart of San Francisco was part of its nationwide retail strategy to better take care of customers.
That's a picture of it. It's 17,000 square feet. That's a huge footprint. I mean, to lose a big vacancy in Union Square.
Yeah, let me just say this about that, though. I know this is being played as smash and grab, so many retail thefts, rampant criminal activity in San Francisco. Much of that is true, but they are hanging so much on that hook when it comes to businesses closing, and that's not really true that they're doing it for just those reasons. The reality is brick and mortar stores are suffering immensely at the hands of online business. You saw the Whole Foods even that closed in San Francisco, and that was talked about in relation to not being able to protect their employees. And again, there may be some truth to that, but they also opened an immense store in a neighborhood that when you talk to other business owners and those who are familiar with financial strategies as it applies to opening a business in San Francisco and these huge retail institutions, you realize that there may have been an error in opening such a big store there, and realizing that error, Whole Foods backpedaled. Yet they put it at the feet of lawlessness when it might have been bad business to open a store there. Again, both things can be true, right? There can both be a fear of opening up a place or keeping a place open in San Francisco because of the both perceived and real lawlessness, the retail theft, the fact that crime has run amok, but also some of these retail institutions, and I would suggest T-Mobile among them, with a 17,000 square foot retail footprint on Union Square, they are realizing that there just isn't a sound business strategy to keeping those doors open. And so I think that's what you're seeing. I think that's what you saw in the case of Whole Foods. That's what you saw in the case of Walgreens, even though it was talked about in that celebrated video, guy, putting all that stuff in his hefty bag. And I think that's what you're seeing in the case of T-Mobile. I mean, you can say I'm wrong, but I really believe that's what's going on there. Nevertheless, it's a big story. That's why we're doing it. Another major retail institution hits the road. This, as another supervisor, is officially challenging Mayor Breed for her seat as mayor. Of course, now this is, give me shelter. Really? I pay for the Chronicle subscription, and then it won't open when I want it to open. Maybe, Kim, you can help me with this story. But
what story are you looking for? What are you looking
I'm looking for the latest person to take on Mayor Breed.
Oh,
you see it there in the rundown?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd suggest the mayor's a troubled mayor, right? Having presided over a situation in San Francisco that continues to just get worse. I noted a couple of the ways that it did get worse.
Asha Safai. Yeah.
So
he's going to challenge her in the 2024 election. That's pretty bold, don't you think?
I don't know. Should I put it in the bold category? Is it bold?
If he loses, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where Mayor Breed's popularity sits right now. Do you?
I think it's waffling. You have a supervisor saying, please look again to the DA, Brooke Jenkins. Please look again at that, the Walgreens shooting. And then DA Jenkins coming out swinging against that supervisor, against her decision, saying, we looked at the evidence. You don't know what you're talking about. Stop it. So I think the cleanup of San Francisco right now, the CHP and the California National Guard and Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Breed and the San Francisco police are all working together to clean things up, the open air drug trade. She's got Jenkins in there. I think time will tell if, and in the next few months, if it's making a difference, if it's making a dent. And if it is, I don't think voters are going to sway from her.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know. This is all about how you play that dent. Is it really making a dent or not? I mean, this guy, Safai, is very similar to Breed based on what I've read. They are, when it comes to housing and retail crime, they're indistinguishable. So, you're going to have to find a way to distinguish yourself from the mayor. Now, in the case of London Breed, normally you'd say incumbency is a great advantage. But because San Francisco is taking on so much water, it's possible that it's not the advantage that it would be normally. But politically, they note in the Chronicle, Safai has not always been aligned with the progressives, who are most opposed to Breed. Safai defeated a progressive when he won election on the Board of Soups in 2016. That was seen, he's viewed as a moderate. And I'll remind you, so is London Breed. They're both viewed as moderate legislators. So there are 16 lesser-known people who have also filed candidate declarations. So the mayoral race is heating up at a time when a lot of stuff is going down in the city. Less than a quarter of the residents in a Chronicle poll last year said that they thought Breed had done an excellent or good job at improving the city. In a more recent survey, residents gave San Francisco government its lowest rating since 2002. And Breed has been mayor since 2018. And she's got great name recognition. She's got all the things that would likely, I would think, buoy her candidacy and get her into office again. But that's the latest, that there is yet another challenger. This one, again, as I say, very similar to Breed politically. So there's that. One other thing going on in the Bay Area, and that is that the Warriors lost last night. And they lost in a game that Steph Curry played out of his mind. He was terrific. But we lacked clutch shooting, it seemed. In fact, I was looking at an article this morning that was sort of showcasing the fact that Curry was so good while others on the team just seem to not step up at a critical moment. It's hard to believe that now down 3-1, this series may be slipping away from the Warriors. It was 104-101, the final. And they, even Cay Johnston, took he made a key three to put them ahead. And then he took a couple of, I thought, ill-timed shots. And then Lonnie Walker of the Lakers stepped up and was brilliant. I mean, this, was interesting. The Lakers, in a sense, had what the Warriors had last season and have had at moments during this season as well, which was really timely play off the bench and from other teammates around LeBron. So it was, again, a tough one because now in a 3-1 hole, it's very tough to climb out. But even the Merc points out that Cay Johnston threw up two costly misses with 5 seconds on the clock. Wish I could have had that back and gotten a better look, Thompson said. One on the left wing, I felt like I rushed it. I should have taken my time. Even with that, we fought back with a chance to win. They did keep it close. They had a chance to win all the way to the end. And, you're so used to seeing them pull it out that there was a part of me that was surprised that they didn't. But anyway, that's the world on the Warriors. The world of the Warriors gets a little tougher as they fall down 3-1. Sting me, if you would, please.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There is there's news out of that Texas gunman world where he had, this is the new, United States of Guns, where we are always reviewing, yet another gunman, yet another motive. What's the story on this guy? He reviewed the mall peak hours 3 weeks before he killed the 8 people, posted details online on Russian social media alongside photos of Nazis, guns, and ammunition.
Oh, what a great guy.
Scoped out the scene of his crime to track when it would be busiest. A social media account that appears to belong to Mauricio Garcia is littered with photos of Nazis. He's 33 years old, I'll remind you. That is not incidental. I'll come back to that in a second.
He does realize he's a person of color, right?
Littered with photos of Nazis, guns, and ammunition, as well as extremist rants about Jewish people. Also women and racial minorities. In the weeks before he committed the senseless mass shooting at Allen Premium Outlets near Dallas, more than 24 photos of the shopping center and surrounding area were uploaded to an account on this Russian platform, including screenshots of the Google location information tracking peak visiting times. It was a well-planned bit of carnage, might be another way to put it. I mentioned the age in relation to this guy because the changes in various laws associated with owning firearms and acquiring firearms in Texas and beyond are about raising the minimum age for acquiring a firearm, particularly, these assault weapons, etc. This guy's 33, so it wouldn't have affected him in the least. They should still raise those ages, but I'm just saying in this one instance, it would not have made a difference. The assault style weapons that are destroying America right now and making life an anxious mess as we go out in public, there's nothing good about them. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I get it how it's been fetishized, sort of like having a Humvee, you know what I mean? Wearing camo, carrying a big gun, it's black, cool. I don't understand it. How you could put it on a Christmas card and how you could, put it in campaign ads. I mean, we've really lost our way on this, I would say respectfully. The Allen Mall shooting victims, 3 kids and a couple. They leave behind their 6-year-old son.
How sad.
An elementary school lost a second grader and a fourth grader, two sisters whose seats will remain empty for the rest of the school year. One of the victims was an engineer who made a home in Frisco, Texas, thousands of miles away from her family in India. The shooter's ties to white supremacist groups, as I mentioned, half the victims Asian American. The shooting also occurred in Collin County, which is a fast-growing Asian American community, makes up close to 20% of that county's population. As you go through the names and you just see these beautiful souls who were all taken, it's a terrible, terrible thing.
I think it's worth noting. You talk about Texas and the rates of gun violence there. That Texas, according to the latest CDC data, is from 2021. And they say Texas had almost double the firearm mortality rate compared to California that year. So California has 39 million residents and 3,576 gun-related deaths. Texas has 29 million residents, so 10 million less, with 4,613 firearm-related deaths. I don't think you can say that having stricter gun laws didn't save some lives there.
Yeah, I will even buttress that point by saying this. If you look at a graph of Texas death by firearms, you can see alongside the loosening of firearm restrictions around the early teens, like 2012, I think, you can just see it like it's the hockey stick. It just goes way, way up. So you have all these deaths at the hands of firearms alongside those rises, alongside the looseness in the laws concerning how quickly you can get a gun and how easy it is to get. The U.S. Defense Department said yesterday that this guy, Garcia, was separated from the Army about 15 years ago because he had a mental health condition. He was not mentally solid enough for the military. They got rid of him under Army regulations at the time. A commander could approve the separation of a service member for physical or mental health conditions that interfere with an assignment or performance of duty. And that's what they did.
So if the Army won't give him a gun, then why should he have one just to have one?
Thank you. Thank you.
What are they doing in Texas? Did they not know that the Army said, no, you can't have a gun, dude, you're out?
It's just a fact that Texas is pretty loose about the guns, you know. Now, I did mention that there was legislation in Texas for the first time on semi-automatic weapons, and there was this new House law in Texas filed by Democratic Representative Tracy King that would prohibit selling, renting, leasing, or giving a semi-automatic rifle with a caliber greater than .22 that is capable of accepting a detachable magazine to any person younger than 21 years of age. Parents and relatives of children killed in the Uvalde shooting, as well as this Representative Tracy King, have said the shooting may have been thwarted had that bill been law last year. A recent University of Texas at Austin survey found a sizable majority of Texas voters, including Republicans, support raising the minimum age to buy all guns from 18 to 21. So again, the guy was talking about, the guy discharged from the military, he was 33. So raising the minimum age for semi-automatic rifle purchases would not have kept him from purchasing his weapon. He used an AR-15 style rifle. Same kind of weapon that the guy in Uvalde, Texas used and killed 19 children and 2 teachers. Similar type of weapon used in Cleveland, Texas. That's about 40 miles northeast of downtown Houston. That was less than 2 weeks ago. We had that. Killed 5 neighbors, remember? It's troubling. It's troubling. Now, I'll just tell you what happened with that proposal, that modest proposal to raise the minimum age from 18 to 21 on buying the assault-style weapon. They did, apparently, it got out of committee. The bill still has to become law, but they never thought it would get out of committee. And now in this environment, it did. They thought they could kind of tie it up in committee, was the conventional thinking. So I'll keep you posted on this. The reality on legislation concerning guns is not too pretty in this country still. So that's the word on guns. I do have, however, some law and disorder. Tony, can we do a real quick law and disorder, if you would? All right, let's do it. Here's some law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
You know, in the United States of guns, don't leave out, in the effort and scramble to report on massacres and white supremacists and these mass shootings, please don't leave out the fact that everybody's driving around with one also. And there is this road rage shooting in Marina del Rey, California, leaves one dead, even as you're proclaiming, Kim, that our gun rate of death is so much less than that of Texas. A 25-year-old man dead. It happened yesterday in Marina del Rey. Another man shot into his vehicle following a road rage incident. It happened in the middle of the day during the lunch hour. The suspect fled the scene and has not been identified. Wow. It's utterly... It's utterly insane is what I was going to say. The thing about road rage is sometimes you don't even know you're in an incident. I had a guy come roaring up behind me on the freeway and I thought, oh my God, did I inadvertently cut that guy off or something? I mean, sometimes you can end up in a battle that you didn't even know you were in. So that's the latest there. I mean, that's how it can end. So
does it seem like people are more angry?
Yeah.
Or is it the same angry? I mean, it just seems like more incidents of people being unreasonable.
It absolutely does feel as though everybody's more agitated. It's sadly. South Pasadena, California, police are going to convert their entire fleet of patrol vehicles to what? If you guessed, I'm sorry, do you want to guess?
Electric?
Warm. I need more specific. Tesla is the answer, everyone. Tesla, yes.
Okay.
The South Pasadena Police Department going to become the first agency in the nation to convert the entire police fleet to electric vehicles, and they're doing it with Teslas. Wow. 10 Tesla Model Y patrol vehicles. The city will also address infrastructure needs by installing 9 police-dedicated Level 2 electric vehicle chargers and 1 Level 3 electric vehicle charger.
I'm sorry, I don't think I can chase that bad guy right now because I just don't have enough juice in the old Tesla.
Look, don't give me that. You can keep them juiced up. That's a typical, I can tell. Okay. I can tell when I'm talking to a combustion engine person. You have the same problem with gas. You used to go, sorry, I can't do this right now because I'm on E. I can't pursue the chase because I'm running out of fuel. They fire them up. They're e-vehicles, and I'll tell you, for me, I'm just sick of breathing that carbon monoxide. I smell it all the time, and it's disgusting. If you go to Asia, some of the big cities in Vietnam, for example, you really smell it. You can't get away from it, and it's obnoxious and it's bad for you. We've talked before about those particulates getting way down in the lungs. So I say bravo for the the e-cars. I do. I say bravo. And yeah, and you do have to adjust the grid. We've got to keep the grid updated to the point that the grid is able to support all of this. There has to be an infrastructure to support it. California's water infrastructure facing many threats. It's being talked about like other public utility systems. It's a critical infrastructure that needs updating. You've got the big melt and this record-setting winter, and now reservoir managers are taking steps to protect water systems from hackers, from terrorist attacks, natural disasters. The flooding that temporarily severed the LA aqueduct. But there are a lot of challenges. Outdated software, poor passwords, they say, aging infrastructure, other weaknesses could leave our California infrastructure concerning water very much at risk. Cyber intrusions are a real issue. Ransomware attacks. You saw that ransomware attack in San Bernardino County in Southern California, they just paid the ransom. That's typically what happens. You get a ransomware attack at a hospital or something like that where you're essentially locking up information critical to so many patients across so many floors in a hospital. You have no choice. They literally just pay the ransom. A lot of older infrastructure is not air-gapped from the internet, they say. In other words, the separation between operational technology and internet technology. So if you got in there, you could do things like change chemical levels. You could manipulate flows in channels or dams. And there's a lack of central regulation or uniform protocols, they say. Multiple agencies, including the EPA, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the American Water Works Association, Homeland Security. They have some degree of risk management oversight. But many of the day-to-day decisions are left up to individual operators. I mean, that's just insanity. These are critical resources in California. So when you look at overall the situation in America, I'm talking about with infrastructure concerning dams, and 63% of the nation's 91,000 dams are privately owned. Federal, state, and local governments and utilities own 35%, and 2% have undetermined ownership. So there has to be a way to bring a coherence and to bring processes, protocols, and standards into place in all of these different places. When you're dealing with cybersecurity threats of the sort that we've clearly seen, you need to really quickly get in line. There has to be federal money, I'd suggest, to kind of inform that situation with some federal support, and you have to have state money as well. But anyway, that's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey,
Let's be careful out there.
I cannot see any chat stuff, so I'm counting on Tony and Kim to monitor the chat. If you feel you've said something particularly pertinent and insightful, and it's not getting on screen, or somehow hasn't been acknowledged, I want you to please blame first Tony and then Kim.
All me. Hey, I'm playing all the drops today, too. I'm trying to do a lot.
I know you've got to be on the drops. What's the story with our scepter drop? Do you have it?
Give me a second.
Oh, my God.
receive the royal scepter.
And what's the other one?
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
It's the rod of equity and mercy that I intend to knock off, actually. I'm going to create our own rod of equity and mercy when I get back. Right now,
it needs to have bling, because I noticed that King Charles has bling in his, and so I feel we need a little sparkle in that.
Well, Kim,
equity and mercy rod.
It would be like you to focus on the superficial. I wanted to have I want it to have equity and mercy is what I want it to have. Okay. It can have some bling, but it has to have equity and mercy. That's the key.
All I could think about when I saw the pictures is that round thing, whatever. Just that's the holy hand grenade is all I could think about.
Well, why we were trying to just figure out what is that round thing that he was holding?
That's the holy hand grenade. Isn't that from Monty Python? I'm telling you. That's what it is.
Well, it certainly looks lovely. Anyway, I'm going to put our best people on the rod of equity and mercy. Smash the like button like a boss. Give us a thumbs up. We covered a lot of territory, I know. Kind of skipped over some things and then gave you a little look at a few other things in the first half hour. Coming up, I have a That's Rich segment that truly runs the table. You will love it because it deals with not only real estate, but with show business. Has a lot of different aspects in That's Rich. That is coming up next. Kim's News, That's Rich, from our satellite location in Washington, D.C. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and let's start with jury deliberations ongoing in the defamation trial against former President Trump. This is E. Jean Carroll. She alleges Trump raped her in a Manhattan department store dressing room in the 1990s and then defamed her when she came forward with those allegations years later, the former president denying the rape allegation. But again, jury deliberations are now underway. The stage is set for high-stakes debt ceiling talks at the White House. That is what is going on. President Biden will host congressional leaders over this stalemate with Republicans about raising the nation's debt limit. Congress needs to raise the nation's borrowing limit before the start of June to avoid what the White House calls catastrophic default. A bill, as Mark had mentioned, to raise the age to 21 to buy an assault weapon is advancing in the Texas state legislature. Here's a little gun with the Texas flag on it. Don't you think that's tells the whole story there?
Yeah.
The measure goes to the House floor for debate. The legislation has become a priority of the Uvalde school shooting families, and it follows a weekend mass shooting at a mall near Dallas. Again, it's a bill to raise the age to 21 to buy an assault weapon. So not banning assault weapons, just raising the age. There you go. There is, speaking of ages, a new effort underway to lower the voting age in California to 17. A proposed amendment to the state constitution got its first committee hearing yesterday. Senator Henry Stern introduced it in February. He says, if we can ask 17-year-olds to join our military and allow 16-year-olds to drive a car, then we must surely trust them to vote. But the Election Integrity Project California feels they are not mature enough and lack life experience. So we'll see. But this is a proposed amendment to the state constitution to lower the voting age in California to 17. There was an effort to lower it to 16. The word is that I've been reading is that this is thought to possibly benefit Democrats, the lowering of the voting age. So there's a lot of conservatives fighting against it.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Is what's happening with this. I didn't, I hadn't put that much thought into it. I don't know. What do you think? You think we should lower the voting age?
I feel like 18 is right. You know?
I mean, it doesn't bad to
18
me.
is the age at which you can be eligible to be in the military, right? You've graduated high school. I mean, at least that's the age at which you normally would. I mean, I say that because perhaps you've, achieved some modicum of knowledge or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know. I think informed voters are tougher and tougher to come by, and I don't know that you get more in the way of informed voters when you go down in age. On the other hand, I think these generations, 16 and 17-year-olds today, face real problems. Much of the landscape of those problems is created by us. So I sort of feel, on the one hand, responsible. Now, I think you have to keep it at 18. I'm ruling 18. It stays 18.
That's it? Okay. Mark Thompson has spoken.
I'd like to take it to the deliberation. That's why I was thinking out loud. But
LinkedIn laying off more than 700 workers worldwide as it gets ready to pull the plug on its China-specific jobs app. The popular business social networking platform announcing the move in a message to employees this week. The company plans to delete all user data from InCareer, I guess that's their China app, by August 9th. And more news on AI. It looks like Alphabet, parent company of Google, is going to show off its artificial intelligence developments at its annual developer conference this week. The company plans to announce its new general use large language model. It's called Palm 2, which the company says can complete a broad range of coding as well as math and creative writing tests. Google is also set to unveil AI advancements to Bard and Search, but not faring so well in the AI area. A Bay Area startup that was developing artificial intelligence grocery delivery solutions is calling it quits. Burlingame-based Farmstead filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, listing $50,000 in assets against as much as $10 million in debt. Farmstead burned through more than $34 million in venture capital.
wow.
Investigators are working to determine if this guy, this meteor, struck a home in Mercer County, New Jersey. The suspected space object crashed into a house in Hopewell Township Monday afternoon, piercing a roof and a ceiling. Police say no one was hurt. Came crashing right down. What are the odds?
That can be, trouble, right?
Yes, it can.
It really can be.
The Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded, means we've got to rely on you. You can help keep us going by contributing via Patreon or PayPal, and you can find the links and so very much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yeah. So excited to be with you from our satellite location. This is my dad's, so well past this, and the whole place is like the Library of Congress. Is pretty crazy here. But anyway, that's Washington, D.C. I'm here close to all of our federal, everyone. Yes, I'm just a stone's throw from the Capitol, the White House, all the places that our money is wasted. And it is a pleasure to be with you. Smash the like button like a boss. Do it for Kim. Do it for Tony. Do it yourself. And smash it with your iron rod. I have a pretty sweet rest of the show for you.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Now, you don't have probably the rod of equity and mercy. It was bestowed upon the king, the new king, over the weekend. But we're going to get a rod of equity and mercy going before long. So until you have something approaching a rod of equity and mercy, smash the like button with the iron rod. Go old school.
I have a little more information about the hand grenade.
About the please.
It's called an orb.
Yeah.
It's the Royal Orb. It is a 30-centimeter wide hollow gold sphere. It has 9 emeralds, 18 rubies, 9 sapphires, 365 diamonds, 375 pearls, 1 amethyst, and a glass stone. The pearls divide the orb into 3 sections.
Sounds a bit over the top, don't you think?
Represent the 3 continents that medieval rulers believed existed.
Yes, of course.
So that's its thing.
Well, that...
See, there's the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
But that's the Holy Hand Grenade. That is not the Royal Orb. The Royal Orb... Kim, do you have a picture of the Royal Orb or not? Can we get one? Maybe before the end of the show. Right now, I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to do a little That's Rich. Tony, you can hit that sounder for That's Rich anytime, or you can not.
And I'm finding the sounder.
All right.
Hold on.
Very good. Yeah, please take a few minutes. Everybody, let's take a smoke. Let's take a smoke break while he tries to find the.
Who are they?
I can't believe this.
1/10 of
1%.
What are they like?
These people are so posh and snobby, they're snotty.
That's Rich on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right. We'll fix it in post. Does anybody watch the show Yellowstone? It's a very popular show.
Love that show. Love it, love it, love it.
So Yellowstone, you can tell us it takes place on a beautiful ranch, right? It's the West, yeah. There's ranch. There's a right. The ranch that is the backdrop for Yellowstone. You have to pay to shoot on that ranch, of course. Yellowstone creator Taylor Sheridan charges Paramount a weekly fee to film on his ranch and then rents the cattle at $25 a head. How much does Taylor Sheridan charge Paramount per week to shoot the series Yellowstone? You want to take some guesses? Guess in the chat. How many weeks are we talking about? Let me see. We're talking about, I don't know how many weeks total it is, but I'm looking for the per week charge. And I am looking, I see 20K, 10K, 25K. Those are all really good guesses. I would have guessed 25K. The answer is $50,000 a week to film
okay. Can you say that one more time?
$50,000 a week to film Yellowstone on his own ranch. The series creator is charging, and nearly $210,000 to train actors at a cowboy camp held on his own property. And then he rents the herd of cattle out, as I say, at $25 a head. This is in addition to the money he already makes as the writer, producer, and sometimes director of Yellowstone and its spin-offs. So, Yellowstone is coming to an end after 5 seasons, and these charges that are associated with the production are really high. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Paramount was charged $214,979, so really $215,000 for the camp that was designed to train the cowboys leading into season 5. That camp lasted a week. Yeah. That?
It's a total racket.
It is a racket. About $33,000 of that $200,000 that was paid for the cowboy camp, $33,000 of it was just for catering. That's right.
You can't have hungry cowboys. Mm-mm.
And the horses were $2,000 a head to rent for that week. A wrangler, thousands of miles away, also charged production $3,000. The wrangler explained to the skeptical production office that she was working on one of Sheridan's ranches and getting his horses ready for filming. Yeah. The production, insanely popular and successful, but also insanely expensive. Another point of contention was the creation of $3,130 worth of prop jewelry that was being made out of state, despite the fact that they were able to apply for tax breaks by using in-state vendors. They still went out of state. The reason for that, I'm guessing, is because people had relationships with other vendors out of state. The high costs also extend to Sheridan's other popular Yellowstone spinoffs. According to the Wall Street Journal, it costs at least $22 million to make a single episode of 1923. That's the Yellowstone prequel that has Harrison Ford in it, I believe. So, I mean, isn't that insane? $22 million to make a single episode of 2023? Anyway, they make a quality show, but let's be honest, that's a lot of dough. That's all we're saying. So,
What I understand is now that Yellowstone is coming to an end, there's 2 prequels, then there's Yellowstone, and now there's going to be a sequel. So that'll be
I
exciting.
see.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder what their per episode fee on that.
And the sequel is going to allegedly star Matthew McConaughey.
Wow.
Yeah.
They do get big stars in it. Like you have Costner, you have Harrison Ford. Yeah. I believe Helen Mirren is in the prequel, the one that Harrison Ford's in. An underground river flowing with gold worth $1 trillion underneath the Las Vegas desert. 500 investors believe they are so close to actually getting this fabled treasure. Adventurer Earl Dorr says it's all there. He claims that he's discovered all this gold under California's Mojave Desert. And he made these statements back in a sworn statement in the 30s. So this has been quite an ongoing search. I mean, it's really, they're calling it the Lost River of Gold, under Vegas into San Bernardino County in California. So much gold that prospectors are still searching for that underground river more than 90 years after the declaration. They think precious metal deposits worth as much as $1 trillion with a TR.
Wow.
Critics, including geologists, there's a crude map if you're looking to sort of establish the location and you have some spare time. They say, geologists, that there cannot possibly be that much gold down there. And it's highly unlikely there be such a large watercourse running under a region as parched as the Mojave. They say that Dorr, who declared this area rich with gold, was a charlatan or a con man. Well, he's certainly met his time. We love charlatan and con people now. Anyway, looking for the gold is tedious and expensive, which is why we mentioned it also in That's Rich. Partners who have been associated with these various ongoing efforts to extract this gold have sunk almost $3 million into the search. And at the end of it, there are many investors who believe that there will be $1 trillion or more in precious metals. There it is, billion-dollar gold legend won't die. That's from the San Bernardino Sun. In the 60s, they wrote that. Meantime, famed talk show host Jerry Springer, may he rest in peace, leaves behind a massive fortune, Kim. Jerry Springer has left behind big, big money.
How much?
How much? That's a good question. Do you have the millionaire music, Tony? Or will that be a...
an undue burden?
I don't know what it's called.
Tony, not a stoner, but actually working the board today like a stoner. It's to be fair to him, it's super confusing the way we have everything set up.
I don't know what you labeled it, so...
Well, it should
and
be...
nothing's alphabetical here, so I'm just...
Yeah, never mind. Anyway, take a guess as to the fortune left behind by Jerry Springer. Now, I'll mention 79-year-old former politician. He was, of course, host of the Jerry Springer Show, also mayor of Cincinnati for a term. You'll remember he did a show called Judge Jerry. He was also on Dancing with the Stars. He had a lot of revenue streams of one sort or another. He shares a daughter with his ex, Mickey Velton. And how much is his fortune, his massive fortune that he left behind worth? You see any guesses, Kim? Or
$50 million from Champagne Wishes, 86 mil from Nick, 200 mil. A lot of people say 200.
I'm going to put my
20
credibility
million,
glasses back on.
395 mil.
I'm going to give it to Nick is closest. Congratulations, okay. Nick. The answer, 75 million.
That's pretty good.
That's a lot of money. Thanks in part to his 27-year tenure as host of the Jerry Springer Show.
Congratulations,
He's left behind.
Nick.
Yeah.
You get nothing.
There. Amy Schumer is selling her Upper West Side penthouse. Gorgeous little number. It's at 190 Riverside Drive, which might mean something to those of you who are in New York or who are familiar with New York. She sold it for $2 million under the asking price. I'll tell you the price in a moment, but first you should know that it is a 12-story building perched on a quiet corner at 91st Street and Riverside Drive. Going to be purchased by Oscar-winning composer and lyricist Benjamin Pasek, known for The Greatest Showman, Dear Evan Hansen, La La Land, so he's done a few things. 4,500 square feet, spans the entire floor of the building, contains 14 rooms, 5 bedrooms, 5.5 baths.
That's beautiful.
The living space is bathed in light, appointed with folding glass walls and skylights that open to a 3,000 square foot landscaped terrace on 2 levels, offering breathtaking panoramic views of Riverside Park, also the Hudson River, the George Washington Bridge, and the city's skyline. There's an elevator that takes you right to your unit. It's key-locked, of course. Opens into the solarium-style living room with a stone and glass fireplace. It's a pretty nice place. Top-of-the-line finishes and appliances. Amy Schumer and her husband, Chris Fisher, are leaving the borough for Brooklyn. And they sold this for $2 million under the asking price. They got $13 million for this penthouse apartment.
It seems like it would be worth more than that. I'm surprised.
Yeah. It's a, I don't know, $13 million is a lot of money.
I mean, for that, though?
Well, I'll remind you, it's not just $13 million. You're paying an extraordinary HOA fee on top of that. Seems like a funny thing to say, but the homeowners association fees might run into the thousands monthly, right? So there's a lot there. But finally, Matthew Perry's home in Los Angeles has been purchased by Rihanna. She's the new owner of Matthew Perry's place, a 40th floor LA penthouse in the 42-story Century condominium building. In 2021, Matthew Perry sold it for $21.6 million. Rihanna has purchased this place. It's 4 bedrooms, 9,200 square feet. And she was already living in the building in a much smaller unit. She's going to get 1 more bedroom, 3 more bathrooms, and almost 6,000 square feet additional in her new high floor pad that was Matthew Perry's. Panoramic views of L.A., a game room, a home theater, chef's kitchen.
I'd live there.
Yeah, a lot to recommend it. So congratulations to Rihanna. And can I leave you with one last big real estate purchase? Only it's not yet a purchase. In fact, this they're struggling to find a buyer for this place, frankly. It's Ivana Trump's $26.5 million New York City townhouse, struggling to find a buyer. Ivana is the ex-wife of Donald Trump, passed away last July in her beloved New York City townhouse. Her 3 children, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, let it sit empty for 4 months before they decided to put it on the market. The leopard print living room and pink marble bathtub evoked all of the flashy sides of the Trumps. It's 8,725 square feet. You see a picture of it there. It's a 5-story mansion on the Upper East Side, and it is still on the market. No buyers, no offers. $26.5 million. It has quite a bit of Trump history, represents the money that she earned in her divorce from Donald Trump. And she had to fight him for every penny, I'll remind you, even though he was the one who had the affair with Marla Maples that led to their divorce. She hosted her celebrity friends there, and she had splashy tastes. and they're reflected in the appointments and in the furnishings.
And the whole house. I mean, it's I would call it a gut job. I mean, look at the fabric, the animal colored fabric on the walls, and the golden things everywhere. Yeah.
Well, it's not for everyone, Kim, if that's what you're saying, but I think perhaps you're being a bit harsh.
No, thank you.
The media outlet associated with putting it out there, one of these real estate, they feel that from Trump family reputation. Many city residents do not want to be associated with the Trump name. But they say, look, we understand it's not everyone's taste. It's the Trump thing that we think, has made it a bit radioactive. But Kim's not wrong. I mean, the renovation costs and all of that on top of the purchase price, yeah, again, they leave it a little out of reach at this point. So that's a wrap on That's Rich.
Because we have, I think this should be included in That's Rich.
All right.
You had asked for and shall receive a picture of the royal orb.
That's the actual royal orb?
There's all the royal tools and accoutrements. And this, I would like to tell you, with a little bit more, is that it does represent the world and Great Britain's rule over the world. So the way when they hand the king the orb, this is what the Archbishop of Canterbury says: "Receive this orb set under the cross, and remember, the whole world is subject to the power and empire of Christ our Redeemer."
Oh.
So that's the symbolism.
Anytime you can work Christ the Redeemer in, I always approve of it. Good. You gotta. There's power to it. If you're not into the Jesus thing, it adds a little something. So bravo. But that's certainly, thank you for putting that, puts the polish on this segment. So thank you. That's Rich for today.
More on how the other half lives.
These people aren't just rich, they're crazy rich.
Next time on The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't think you can get an orb going, but I'm telling you that rod of mercy and what's the other thing? It's mercy and one other thing.
Empathy, equity.
Equity and mercy.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I'm putting my best people on that when we get back. The Pulitzer Prize winner David Cay Johnston next. We'll talk about Putin's Russia and how Putin may be going broke and fast. That as we continue. Smash the like button like a boss. Give us a thumbs up.
Smashed it.
Mark Thompson Show.
Iron rod.
This is the Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let us begin with Senate Democrats now asking a Republican donor to give them a list of any gifts or payments made to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The request comes after several ProPublica reports revealed that Texas billionaire Harlan Crow provided lavish trips and gifts to Thomas. Crow has denied accusations that he attempted to influence Thomas's work on the court. We've got daily protests continuing over the New York City subway chokehold death of a homeless man. This homeless person was struggling with mental health issues. Last night, the New York Police Department found a Molotov cocktail among the protesters, arrested 11 of them after they clashed with police at a subway station. It's the spot last week where Jordan Neely was put in a chokehold and died after passengers say he was acting erratically and threatening other passengers. An FDA panel of outside experts is weighing whether birth control pills should be sold without a prescription. Irish drug maker Perrigo wants to sell a pill over the counter in the United States. The agency wants to know if people will be likely to use that pill safely. At least 125 athletes and athletic staff members from the University of Iowa and Iowa State University are now involved in a sports gambling investigation. UI says at least 26 athletes from baseball, football, wrestling, and men's basketball and men's track teams are involved. ISU says at least 15 athletes from its football, track, and wrestling teams are involved as well. Federal regulators say efforts to decommission 3 Mile Island's Unit 2 reactor are now moving into a new phase. That facility near Middletown, Pennsylvania, was the site of the most serious nuclear accident in America when it experienced a partial meltdown in 1979. Now, the latest phase will see crews begin to remove core debris from the reactor. It is expected to take about 6 years. Sonoma County stepping up efforts to keep homeless people off the Joe Rodota Trail once and for all. The trail reopened in April after the latest encampment sweep. Since then, the county has spent about $200,000 on cleanup and upgrade efforts in hopes that this is the last encampment sweep. Santa Rosa Regional Parks has repaired landscaping, installed new fencing, and added dozens of boulders to a 300-foot section of the trail near Roseland Avenue. The 8.5-mile path that connects downtown Santa Rosa to Sebastopol has been cleared of homeless encampments several times in recent years, but it always ends up getting repopulated. The minute they do the sweep, the next day people are right back in. And lastly, a New York hospital system is suing an ex-morgue worker for posting cadaver photos and videos to her social media accounts. Who does she think wants to see that? Northwell Health says Quantaze Sharpton posted graphic photos snapped in the morgue at Long Island Jewish Medical Center. When the hospital found out, 45 days after she started the job back in January, they fired her. But she kept posting everything from amputated body part pictures to internal organs, even a late stillbirth. The hospital says Sharpton was using the content to get more followers. Northwell Health, which operates 15 hospitals in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester, is suing for damages and trying to get her to take down those images. So, what a thing.
Wow.
The Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded, and that means we've got to rely on you. You can help keep us going by contributing via Patreon or PayPal. Find the links and so much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
And we are back. Mark here in the home in which I grew up. This is Washington, D.C. I'm back here with the folks, but we wanted to keep the show going. I mean, we try to do things that indicate to you, a commitment on our part to keep the show going, and this is one of them. Even though I'm on the road and back here in D.C., we're still putting shows together, and we're working hard to make certain that these shows are fresh and that you get a forum where there is news, there is information, and there is opinion. And so it is. Also want to thank so many of you who have stepped up and supported us through PayPal, through Patreon. As Kim mentioned, we're completely crowdfunded. And then many of you send us funky stuff and interesting stuff. And among the funky comes this. The hat, which you can get at getmarkmerch.com, along with a bunch of other merch, that someone did purchase there at getmarkmerch.com. A hat, just like this one, is touring the globe via cruise ship. And they have sent us the hat in all of these different locations and exotic ports of call. Now, I've seen them on board as they've gone from place to place. And these are all locations in Spain, I think. And so they've literally, you can tell by the shadow, they are literally putting the hat there. It's not like they're photoshopping it in later. So this is great. This is listener and viewer Gene and his mom who are on a cruise. And you see the hat right in the lower part of the screen. And there's the hat in all of these different locations. I love it. I love that he's dragged this hat. And he even found this, a vegan cafe, which I Thank you, and I really appreciate it. It is there, as you can see, upper center of the screen. So that's the latest. It just arrived today. So thank you, Gene, for that. If you want any merch at all, you can get it at getmarkmerch.com. A lot of cool merch up there. We've got throw pillows. We've got mugs. We've got the hats. Getmarkmerch.com. We have the pullovers. The sweat. What is it?
Hoodies,
hoodie.
sweatshirts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Hoodie. And
Nice.
there it is. Thank you, Tony. That's all the stuff that is available. There's the hoodie. All of our stuff now, we're going with this great embroidery. So the stuff really is, and it has been, pretty good quality. I mean, I think you'll be impressed. And the
Speaking of
new
that's
shirts.
rich, it's very high end.
It is quite high end, but never too high end for our listeners and viewers. The basic tee and the new shirts that are coming out have this great embroidery too. They sent me a couple of them. I wore one of them, I think, about 10 days ago. I'll wear the other when I get back. So this will be added to. This whole list of merch items will be augmented with more. Will be expanded. A couple of the popular items, you can see the bottle opener. You can also see the pot holder. Pot holder is a fan favorite. So there is that. We're waiting on David Cay Johnston. And while we wait, I wanted to do something which I really want to do all the time on this, to be seldom time. And that is, those of you who leave comments after the show is done, you watch it in replay. Most people watch it in replay. And so I get comments after the show. It's, after hours trading. And so the comments I'm getting, and it's interesting, a lot of the people who come out have some very different opinions than the ones in the mainstream. I'll give you a couple of examples. Thompson said how detailed both women's testimony has been, but neither one of the women accusers can recall within 2 years of when these claims assaults took place. Their inability to recall when these so-called assaults took place is clearly a tactic to prevent Trump from defending himself. Thompson and his ilk need to ask themselves why both women have amnesia about the year these events took place. Well, it's interesting. I'm sure that's the E. Jean Carroll case that you're referring to. This is Joel. And the reality is that they were quite specific about what happened. They just couldn't put a date on it. I guess because it wasn't, a date that was circled in the calendar. I will tell you this. The scenario that was described is completely consistent with the Trump scenarios as laid out by all of these women accusers. The MO is exactly the same. It seems incredible to me that this didn't happen along the lines of exactly what they said happened. So, sorry, again, without knowing more of what, this is David Katz you're really referring to when Katz was talking about this case. Without knowing more about what Katz said specifically, hard for me to comment more specifically, but I'll just say generally, that story that E. Jean Carroll tells and the story that other women tell, they're identical. And at some point, you have to say, there seems to be, an overwhelming consistency here, and it's consistent with what he himself said he does. He told Billy Bush that as the two sort of cackled like frat boys on that Access Hollywood bus. So, again, I know he explained it away. It's locker room talk. I never do that. Really? Okay. But so he explained what he does, and it's exactly the dance that E. Jean Carroll described and all of these other women described. And
like
yet
a pattern. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. George Santos. They liked Corey. They liked Pat Thurston. Anthony Davis will be back. It's just fun to go back and see the different comments. So all I would say is for all of you who enjoy the show, look at the comments or leave comments. It's a fun thing for us to look through, and even your thing as we act along the way, how much something costs, how much, we do all of those things, and in truth, it's a really fun thing to see your reactions. So thank you for that. We're waiting on David Cay Johnston. I hope he'll be along, and if he's not, I will just say this, because it's important in looking at the war in Ukraine. The information and what I was looking at from David Cay Johnston, I thought was fascinating, and it's a part of the story when it comes to Putin and Ukraine that you're not hearing a lot about. Specifically, Putin is going broke fast, says David Cay Johnston. While you may not have been looking, Europe stopped buying Russian oil and gas, and that's just the beginning. Without firing a shot, David Cay Johnston says, President Joe Biden's team and American allies are successfully waging an economic war against Russia. My analysis, this is from David Cay Johnston, of data from the Kremlin and other sources, reflects this. Vladimir Putin's economic muscle is fast withering, even as his inept generals demoralize conscripts and mercenaries recruited from the Gulag fail to gain much ground against the scrappy Ukrainians with their flexible field tactics, superior intelligence gathering, and expanded arsenal of sophisticated American and European weapons. So he's saying, look, even as the Ukrainians are given a hard time on the battlefield and, their generals are talking about turning around and going back to Russia, the real battle that Putin is losing is an economic one. Russia's economy, David Cay Johnston writes, never vibrant, is now in tatters. Russia is pretty much a one-note economy. What's that?
I thought that there was no choice for much of Europe but to buy Russian energy products because they need that to stay warm during the winter. So how did they get around not buying those things from Russia and putting them in a worse state?
I'll get to that. Russia's pretty much a one-note economy. Fossil fuel exports pay the bills in Russia. More than 75% of Russian exports are fossil fuels, chemicals, other products with fossil fuels. The lack of diversity makes Russia very vulnerable to smartly designed and rigorously enforced Western economic sanctions. The sophisticated sanctions drawn up by the Biden administration are proving far more effective, says David Cay Johnston, than the sanctions imposed by previous administrations against various misbehaving countries, sanctions that were mostly cosmetic and easily sidestepped. Ominously for Putin, Russian oil now sells for well below the world price of oil, another sign of effective economic sanctions. The European Union, this gets to you, the European Union has cut Russian oil imports from about 750,000 barrels a day to near zero.
Wow.
Europe's replacement oil is coming largely from the Middle East, a boon to dictators, but a vice on the Kremlin pocketbook. Europe has also weaned itself off cheap Russian natural gas, which Putin mistakenly thought gave him a cudgel with which to beat Europeans into closing their political eyes, or at least looking the other way, at his Ukraine invasion. Some more cynical experts asserted that when the war started, Europe would never make these moves. But Europe has proven them wrong. So there's the answer, Kim.
Well,
they have weaned themselves off of that natural gas, and they have cut their use of Russian oil, preferring the oil out of the Middle East. Comparing three prices for oil illustrates Putin's revenue problem. Here you go.
Some people in the chat, Edward asking, isn't China buying their gas? And Sol Guerrero, is China helping Putin in any way?
Well, one of the things that's happening is that the oil that enters onto the world market out of Russia that has to go by tanker, which is a lot of the way that it's transported, that is being affected by sanction. And so that can't exceed a certain cap that has been placed upon Russia by world sanctions. So to the point, meaning Russia's going broke, you are seeing oil ascend to the levels and prices that it would on the world market were it not for sanctions. So here you go. So that affects dramatically even the purchase of oil from China, let's say. West Texas Intermediate, an American oil used to set benchmark prices, has plummeted more than 44%. So the price of oil has dropped from a high of $123 last year to $69 last Friday. Bent crude, oil from under the Atlantic between Scotland and Norway, selling at $73. It's down from $114 last summer. The price of Russian oil fell from $92 a barrel a year ago to $50 this month. That's a 46% decline. And those figures come from the Kremlin finance ministry. So it's hard to believe that this is happening, but they say the Russian economy is growing, of course, but there's no way it can be growing under these kinds of market pressures. Because of sanctions, and here's the thing I was just mentioning before, because of sanctions, Russian oil shipped on water by tanker is limited to $60 a barrel, well below the two benchmarks for crude. Actual Russian price lowered by more than $10 a barrel based on the Kremlin's own account. So the West can limit the price to $60 because seagoing tankers rely on maritime insurance companies that Western governments can make comply with their sanctions in Russia. So if you want your oil to go from here to there, it has to be insured, and maritime insurance companies are connected to the West. To get around this, it's widely believed that Russia has been paying huge premiums to buy aging oil tankers. This will help Russia create a shadow fleet to maybe get around the $60 price cap. So
Brian says India is buying Russian oil. I don't know if that's true.
Well, Russian oil no longer has buyers with strong finances. Its remaining overseas oil customers, Cuba, Egypt, North Korea, Sri Lanka, all countries with little capacity to pay cash for imported oil. The one bright spot was mentioned by several of you in the chat, and that's China. And the maritime sanctions have no effect on China. So the oil that he moves, Putin, from Russia to China and other neighbors, who aren't affected by the maritime thing because they've got a pipe into China and other places. That's certainly one of the things that Xi and Putin talked about when they met, right? Putin has also driven some of the best minds out of his country, David Cay Johnston points out. It's a costly brain drain that will further weaken government revenues, perhaps reduce revenue from cyber crimes, and hurt long-term economic growth. Ukraine also has a brain drain. So this is happening. So hopefully both those questions answered. Yeah, China is a customer, and China isn't affected by the caps that are affecting maritime transport of oil. But that may not be enough to grow the Russian economy. The Western oil companies with technological skill to extract oil from the harsh Russian climate, including BP, ExxonMobil, Shell, they've all withdrawn from Russia. That will likely mean damage to Russian oil fields, pipelines, and refineries because of the lack of technical expertise. Again, brain drain meets Western sanctions, and that's where you end up. Poor management of oil fields and equipment is an old story in Russia, he says. In the Soviet era, they relied on corporate spies in America to improve their petroleum technologies because Western companies won't sell internal air travel network is shrinking. Many Russian jetliners were impounded overseas. Airbus and Boeing jets are being cannibalized for parts. And flight safety is being compromised in Russia. I mean, he just lays out point after point about how the Russian economy is being decimated by Russian sanctions. And so the Russian economy is small. And this sort of interruption in their economic output, it has a dramatic effect on the bottom line. In 2021, Russia's economic output, or gross domestic product, was less than 1.8 trillion. Compare that to 23.3 trillion for the U.S. California alone has a $3.4 trillion economy, almost twice the size of Russia's, but with only a fourth of the people. So the way to the rest of the world, he says, is Russia's economy is $4 trillion when measured using the purchasing power parity model he talks about. It's still not much more economic output than California. And so Russia finds itself decimated by all of these different economic pressures, and that leaves out completely the Wagner group that is now saying those are the mercenaries, the Russian mercenaries that are now beginning to question their role there, the Russian generals who are beginning to turn. This is a period in which Vladimir Putin and the Russians have to re-examine their role there. Meaning, if your role is to take over Ukraine, it likely won't happen. Certainly not given the methodology and strategies that are in place now. But if the idea is just to annex regions of Ukraine that have already succumbed to Russian occupation, I suspect that could happen. And that might be where this whole thing ends up, which is not a good place. But it seems extraordinary that the Ukrainians can repel the Russians. But this is certainly a much, much bigger exercise than Putin ever anticipated. And not just Putin, than anticipated. So, meantime, what's happening on the debt is scary. You have a kind of reality concerning the debt in Washington that's being played out with extremists in the GOP's right wing. And the suggestion is they really may, just to own the libs, take us over the brink. It seems extraordinary, and we've had person after person come on here and just talk about the fact that there's a theater to all of this. But those who are the actors in this theatrical production, they're extreme players. They're along the lines of a Marjorie Taylor Greene. So how that goes down ultimately will be played out in the next couple of weeks. I mean, June 1st is not the drop dead date, but it's close to it. So we will see. I guess David's not joining. I don't know what happened with David Cay Johnston.
Why don't I do a little bit of news and you can check in with him?
Yeah,
let's do that.
That sounds like a good idea.
Let's go to news. Yeah, we can resend them.
All right, we'll go to news. Hang on a second. Look, we're going to go to news, and then I'll check in with him. Okay. Smash the like button like a boss. And it's the Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, the news. As Mark had mentioned, the debt ceiling is really the big topic of conversation. Any White House effort for a short-term debt limit extension is getting some pushback now from the House Speaker. California Republican Kevin McCarthy telling NBC News just hours before he's set to meet with President Biden on the issue. The Republicans have refused to raise the debt limit unless President Biden and Democrats come to the bargaining table and agree to spending cuts. Doesn't look like either side is willing to give in this situation at all. Former Trump attorney Michael Cohen is asking a federal judge to toss out a lawsuit he faces from his ex-boss. In a court filing, lawyers for Cohen called the complaint frivolous, vindictive, and an abusive act of pure retaliation. The former president slapped his longtime personal attorney with a $500 million breach of contract lawsuit last month. Trump's 32-page complaint claims Cohen violated a confidentiality agreement and his attorney-client relationship with his tell-all book and many media appearances. Tomorrow, supposed to be Judgment Day for the White House, according to a top House Republican. Congressman James Comer of Kentucky says he's set to unveil information surrounding the Biden family's overseas business dealings. The Justice Department could decide whether to charge President Biden's son, Hunter, on tax charges, but Comer is urging the department to wait until he releases his new bombshell information. President Biden is set to discuss border issues with the president of Mexico today ahead of the end of Title 42. The Mexican president said the two will hold a discussion over the phone about immigration and fentanyl trafficking. Both countries are bracing for the effects on migration following the end of Title 42. That's the pandemic-era rule that allowed border officials to expedite deportations. Christina Applegate may be retiring from acting. The star of Netflix's Dead to Me was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2021. She told Vanity Fair that she can't even imagine going to set right now. Applegate noted that it is a progressive disease and that it could get worse. While she filmed the third season of the dark comedy series after her diagnosis, she said it wasn't an easy task for her, saying she struggled with immobility and that she gained weight from the medication she was taking.
No, that's so sad. Jeez.
Actor Robert De Niro is a dad for the 7th time.
Wow. How? Let me guess how old he is. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
That's in the next line of the story. I won't say it.
I want to.
He's a dad.
I'm guessing he's 76. Is that right?
It's pretty good. You want me to give you the answer? Are you done?
Yeah. I'm committing to 76. Am I right?
He is 79.
Oof.
He has not revealed who the mother of his child is, but his girlfriend was showing off a baby bump last month. De Niro's eldest child is 51 years old.
I love it.
His youngest so far is 11 years old. So, yeah. And he's got a new one coming in. Seventh baby.
That is true. I mean, it's no Nick Cannon, but, you're in the hunt. I like it.
You are in the hunt. Yes.
Yeah.
That is, now see, do you have a problem with that? Because the man's almost nearly 80 years old. And so he's really probably not going to be around for most of this kid's life.
Well, it's sad, I think. Yeah. It's sad. So when you said you have a problem with it, ideally I'd like the kid to have a, who said, I'm guessing the mother wasn't 79.
No,
John Watson, that's great.
No, I don't know. What's the point of becoming a father and bringing a new life into the world if you're not going to be around to nurture that life?
Yeah, it feels like a little bit of
daddy.
Little bit of an ego play. It's not cool. You're right, generally. And I'm not a guy who always feels as though it has to be a traditional mother,
right,
father. I don't believe that at all. But you want some kind of loving house. And here's the other thing, if you want the optimistic side of this. The child and the mama will obviously be left a substantial fortune, along with the other members of the family, from the De Niro treasure chest. And maybe she'll meet somebody who is a better father to the child, or a solid father, or as good a father to the child.
Yeah.
But I agree with you in general. It's not the model you would want.
Yeah, it really isn't.
When you're again. Now I'm not saying 79 is not the end of the road at all. And this, you could easily see that child.
But perhaps it should be the end of the road for parenthood.
I see. Yeah, if possible. Yeah.
Just the thought.
Yeah.
But then maybe the world has been the male species has been designed so that that's not true. And we just take all the sperm we can get until the bitter end. The the Mark Thompson Show is crowdfunded
Until you get the scepter and
the orb, yes.
And the orb, yeah.
It means we have to rely on you, of course. You can help keep the show going by contributing, and we've got the Patreon and PayPal links and so much more at themarkthompsonshow.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show. Pew!
Tony, you can maybe...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tony's been off a little while. And so he's got to get.
I just don't know where all the things are. It's like
no, it knows. You have to get reacquainted where everything is. Yeah, it's kind of.
I did my own sound effects. It was all right.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome. I will tell you, I'm at my parents' house. This is Washington D.C., and I ran into something this morning. I just realized that I should share this with you. We have our own merch on this show. We just went through a big thing on it. But this isn't the first merch that I had, and this is a piece of collectible merch from my time in San Francisco on News Center 4. Can you see News Center 4, Kron?
Oh, yeah.
Now, okay, News Center 4 was NBC, KRON, when I was there. And I was the weather guy. You can see Mark Thompson's neighborhood weather. I don't know if you can get out neighborhood weather. Okay. At the time, nobody was doing these live remotes with as a weather guy in different communities. So I was sort of pioneer in that way. Now you see them all the time. It's much easier to do a live remote. There was a little more associated with live remotes back then. Anyway, the reason I mentioned this drinking glass, okay, and we don't have any glassware yet in the Mark merch line, but we do have some pretty cool drinking things you can drink from. Let me show you the cool thing about this. You see how there is a TV screen in the center of it?
Yeah, where's your face?
So the TV screen, that's an old school TV screen, and you can see my face sort of in there. The way this thing is set up.
Yes.
Okay.
You're like a hologram.
Cold water, and I don't have enough water in there. The cold water, if cold beverage is poured in there, the screen becomes my face.
I love that. It still works
It's
after all
pretty
these years.
clever. I guess it does sort of. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, but it really will get clear. I mean, it'll really be the kind of thing that you can notice. And I just found, I'm rooting around for a glass in this craziness that is my parents' house. And I just grabbed this, and then I went, holy cow, this is so.
That's nice.
So cheers. Here's to your orb.
I wonder how much we could sell that for on eBay. What do you think?
Never selling that. This is
at least $40. Don't you think? That's a piece of history.
That is how dare you, $40.
Hey, I'm trying to fund the show, sir.
Good day, sir.
Meantime, I will tell you about something that happened that is right up our alley when it comes to corruption and sort of watching the watchers. You see so much attention now paid to Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court and the way that they have been corrupted both philosophically and corrupted both in terms of monies they've taken. Calvin Wong, thank you. I'm going to put my credibility glasses on to see what you're saying.
He says, Mark, do you see an encyclopedia or dictionary that you used when you were in school in your family library?
I haven't looked, but I will. That's a great question. I will look and report back to you. That's a really great question. I'm going to let Calvin Wong and you decide. Do you want me to continue to talk about federal officials? I want to touch on this story, and then I've got an amazing story about a group of people who've said, I've had enough. I'm not paid enough. And when I tell you who they are, you'll go, wow, that's okay. the world economy affecting this group of people. But first, I want to tell you about how people with inside knowledge here in Washington, D.C., took that inside knowledge around COVID and made a fortune. We talk about SCOTUS, we talk about Clarence Thomas, we talk about the philosophical compromises that they're just, it's a completely corrupt institution. And like so many institutions in Washington, capable of doing so much good, but also capable of doing so much harm. And in their corrupted form, I'd suggest the Supreme Court and many of these judicial appointees have done a lot of harm and continue to. But this is not a story about that. This is a story about federal officials who are working on the government response to COVID-19 and how they made well-timed financial trades during the pandemic, both as the markets plunged and as the markets rallied. And they knew that the threat that this pathogen presented from China, that this virus presented, they knew that it was going to have all sorts of effects on the markets in this country. But they knew it before anyone in this country did, before the U.S. general public did, might be a way to put it. So in January of 2020, this virus started spreading in China. Health officials were on high alert, ready for a crisis. A deputy to top health official Anthony Fauci reported 10 sales of mutual funds and stocks totaling between 157,000 and 480,000 that month. A deputy to Anthony Fauci trading on that kind of information? Collectively, officials at another health agency, Health and Human Services, reported 60% more sales of stocks and funds in January of that year than the average over the previous 12 months, driven by a handful of particularly active traders. By March, agencies across the government were working on wide-reaching measures to prop the economy up and to hold markets up, right? Then Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao purchased more than $600,000 in 2 stock funds while her agency was involved in the pandemic response, and her husband, Mitch McConnell, was leading negotiations over a giant market-boosting stimulus bill.
Shouldn't that be illegal?
Thank you. Shouldn't it be? And I'm not done. As the government was devising a loan package aimed specifically at helping companies like Boeing and General Electric, a Treasury Department official involved in administering that aid acquired shares of Boeing and General Electric. It's outrageous. The degree of corruption is outrageous.
Well, I guess if we're okay with a Supreme Court justice having trips on a super yacht and an education at a hoity-toity private school paid for, then everything else is, is okay too. It's gravy.
Don't forget buying his mom's house and letting her
right.
live there rent-free.
How could we forget?
Federal officials own millions of dollars of stock in industries most affected by the pandemic and by the government's response to the pandemic. About 240 officials at health agencies and at the Pentagon. The Pentagon was a key player in the vaccine rollout, you remember. Remember, Trump had that big press conference. He had all those Pentagon generals and admirals, and it looked like, it was like a military parade. About 240 officials at those health agencies and at the Pentagon reported owning a total of between 9 million and 28 million in stocks of drug manufacturing and biotechnology companies that all won federal contracts related to COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021. This is a new investigative piece from the Wall Street Journal, and it lays it all bare. 400 officials across 50 agencies reported owning stocks in airline, resort, hotel, restaurant, and cruise companies in early 2020. By March, every major agency was drawn into the pandemic response, as you know. That month was the most active for trading by officials across the federal government. At Health and Human Services, in the Wall Street Journal's analysis of financial disclosure forms for about 12,000 officials from 2016 to 2021, March, right after the pandemic hit, was the most active for trading in all of that period, from 2016 to 2021. All of a sudden, they all started trading. Federal officials reported more than 11,600 trades that month, 44% more than in any other month if you analyze 2016 through 2021. Senior federal officials, this is to Kim's point, are required to disclose financial assets and transactions and those of their spouses and dependent children in annual reports. Federal employees are barred from working on matters in which they have a significant financial stake. They're barred from trading on non-public information learned on the job and from taking any official action that creates appearance of a conflict of interest. They are barred, Kim.
But it didn't
Again,
stop them?
who watches the watchers? Who watches the Supreme Court? Who watches Congress? Who oversees those who are charged with oversight? If there's no cop on the beat, they get away with it. Agency ethics officials rarely have a complete picture of what employees are working on or privy to, especially during a fast-moving government mobilization in response to a national emergency. You'll remember something else. During the Trump administration, they removed a lot of those overseers deliberately, I would suggest, right? The Inspector General's office was gutted. So the very people who are charged with keeping an eye on these federal employees, their jobs were eliminated or their jobs were left open. Most agencies' ethics rules focus on what kinds of stocks officials can trade, not when they can trade. There are no restrictions on federal officials investing in diversified mutual funds, for example. I find this fascinating and I find it infuriating, right? At the same time. By late January, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention was rushing to develop accurate tests. Remember, 3 into January of 2020, top U.S. health officials were alerted to this unexplained virus in China. And so, as the Food and Drug Administration was racing to facilitate prevention and treatment options for this coronavirus, and the CDC was preparing reports to publish, there was stock market trading going on. I'll leave you with this last thing. While the stock market remained high, Dr. Auchenschlaus, now Dr. Hugh Auchenschlaus is the principal deputy director at NIH, there with Fauci, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Why do I want the doctor drop?
Where's Dr.? We don't. Do you have Dr. Emil Schohausen? I don't think it's in there. I don't think it's in there.
I'd really like to have him.
Yeah, we do. Where is it when you need it? Stock market's still up at that point. Dr. Auchenschlaus reported selling it. It is, you're right. Auchenschlaus. It's just Dr. Emil Auchenschlaus. Reported selling 15,000 to 50,000 of a stock mutual fund. Days later, he sold 2 more mutual funds and a stock, Chevron, according to his financial disclosures. They give wide dollar ranges. That's the way the financial disclosure statements work. That was just the beginning. Dr. Auchenschlaus was invited to a January 29th meeting of the NIH working group called the International Clinic Research Subcommittee. The top agenda item was the Wuhan coronavirus, plans for response. In the last days of January, Dr. Auchenschlaus and his boss got an email. His boss, maybe you know him, Dr. Fauci, signaling the severity of the threat. Public health service officers has been told they could be deployed and that a quarantine effort might begin. Dr. Auchenschlaus disclosed 6 sales of mutual funds that day, totaling between $111,000 and $315,000 in value. Put simply and just in summary, and I'll post this to my Twitter feed if you want to read the entire investigative piece. These are government figures, all of whom have access to information and strategies as coronavirus was breaking, the wave was breaking over this country. And prior to announcements being made, they traded in stocks that seem linked to and related to coronavirus strategies, relief, and effects. That might be the best way to put it. Again, bravo to the Wall Street Journal. There is so much of this stuff going on. You count on Crew to do that. You know, the ethics group Crew, they do a ton of this as well. ProPublica. This is what you need, the kind of journalism that exposes this. It's an outrage. It's shameful. So that's the latest. I'll post it to my Twitter feed. Sting me, and then I will tell you what's up. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I saw this, and I couldn't believe it. You know the Sherpas that lead you up these, you know, big mountain treks from Kilimanjaro to K2 to, right? You know, to Mount Everest. The Sherpas now are abandoning the jobs that they made famous.
Why?
They say high risk and low pay. Sayonara, sucker. I'm done with this.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah. The renowned Nepali mountain guide who holds the record for the most ascents of Mount Everest says that there's a struggle. He sees no future. It's an increasingly common sentiment in a trade that has often been passed down through the generations. The risk-to-reward calculation for more Sherpa families argues for abandoning the mountain. The dangers of guiding climbers to the world's highest peaks with the ever-present possibility of falls, avalanches, and extreme weather are evident. Nearly one-third of the 315 recorded deaths on Everest over the past century have been of Sherpa guides. So, just in the last month, 3 Sherpas died when they were hit by a column of ice at a glacier near the mountain's base camp. The pay is also modest, as you might imagine. There are a few who make it to an elite and decorated club of guides after, years of grueling Sherpa work. Sherpas early in their career make about $4,000 minus expenditures for arranging gear, and that's a bulk of their yearly income, $4,000. What is pushing Sherpas to leave the industry and to discourage their kids from taking it up, it really was a generational thing for a long time, is the scant security that it offers. If a guide becomes disabled or ends up dead, there's no safety net for his family. Insurance payouts are limited, and a promised government welfare fund for Sherpa guides has not materialized. Some who abandoned the mountain are migrating abroad. They are looking to better job prospects.
It's a whole new change in way of life for the people there then.
That's right. That's exactly right. One Sherpa survived one of the deadliest disasters on Everest. An avalanche killed 16 Sherpas in 2014. Many mountain guides had hoped that the tragedy would bring a reckoning for the industry and create new safety measures and life insurance offerings. But after the disasters, the Sherpas even threatening to cancel Everest climbs, which bring in millions of dollars every year to Nepal. They created a welfare fund, but it has never been activated. These Sherpas are seen, I think, the implication, as sort of an underclass of workers, undercompensated, underappreciated, and exposed to tremendous risk. And now they're saying, hey, sayonara, sucker, I'm done. I really am done with this.
Sayonara,
and as I said,
sucker.
Little security and little hopes of changes that will make a difference. And the work is grueling. To manage expeditions on Nepal's peaks above 20,000 feet, climbing is allowed on 414 of them. The industry needs at least 4,000 high-altitude Sherpas who are, they are acclimatized to the high altitude. They're able to, handle. It's a totally different game at that altitude. You've heard people talk about climbing. You take one step and then you're out of breath. You have to gain. I mean, it's really intense at that altitude.
Breaking news.
Mm.
It is the note from CNN that a verdict has been reached in the civil battery trial brought by writer E. Jean Carroll against former President Trump. We don't know what the verdict is, but we know one has been reached.
Wow. Now, David Katz predicted a guilty verdict for Trump in that. We will see. But that is what, and David Katz, I'll remind you, his predictions have been eerily accurate.
Mm-hmm.
We call him Nostrakatzes. He is so very accurate. So we will see. Who is going to clean up the mountain? Asked Ricky. This is a great point. The other thing that's happening on Everest particularly is there's trash everywhere. I mean, it's another environment where human beings, instead of leaving, no footprint, leaving it as they found it, there's trash everywhere. It's a garbage pit, a lot of Everest. A lot of that garbage covered by snow, And, of course, as the big thaw has hit, there have been more and more corpses that have been revealed along the way.
Gross.
Yeah. It's a gross, grim reality that people die on Everest. Everest is not the tough climb. K2 is the tough climb. So just in terms of difficulty of the two celebrated mountains, K2 is the one with the real problems. Climbers spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on gear and travel, but only $4K to the guide. Exactly. The guides make nothing. And they've just said, we've had enough, And again, it was a generational thing. It was almost a cultural thing to continue that legacy generation to generation, but no more. So they'll read that verdict today, will they not, Kim? The Trump verdict?
I hope so. I'm watching it to see if we get any news, but they didn't say when they plan to read the verdict. I don't have a time for you.
All right. Well, we begin to wrap up here. I want to thank all of you who have joined us today. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing everything super clearly. And by the way, Ann Herring, thank you for the super sticker, and thank you, Ann, for being a supporter in every way. I mean, there's certain people whose names I know because you've been supporters on Patreon, on PayPal. You come here with super stickers. You're really, it would seem, committed to keeping us on the air, and that's what it takes this community to do it. So thank you, Ann. You're one of those people, and I so appreciate it. Also, Mike Hendricks. What up, Mike Hendricks? Thank you for the 10 spot, Mike. Thank you for the super sticker. William, thank you. A 3 spot. And Vivian El Shawa. I have to say this, Vivian's another one. Very supportive, always there for us. All of you are so really helpful, and that's what it's going to take to keep us on the air. Joe, you too. Thank you for the 20 on the super sticker. Joe Fong. And Calvin for that $20, and I will look for that encyclopedia that you described. It's somewhere here. I'm sure there are reference materials here that I used. Yeah. This place is a little bit messy. Not exactly easy to find everything.
And it looks like the further right the shot goes, the more messy it gets. The more the
that
filing
way?
system is failing. Yeah.
There is, and this goes all the way around. The whole house is just full of, and Dad's got,
there's a lifetime of collection there going on,
he's
right?
got, Shakespeare plays and TV scripts and all the stuff. And it's amazing. Pretty remarkable guy, But Tony, I'll bring you here. Tony,
Yes,
we've
sir?
had challenges today, but I think
sorry.
you've risen to them.
My bad.
I think it takes time, honestly, to get the vibe, and when you're
and
here
it just-
only ever so often,
Yeah.
it's hard. Yeah.
That, and it's just, I don't know like I said, to find the drops to play. Like it's not alphabetical. Like to tell everyone home, it's like it's just a line of all the drops. Like none of them are alphabetical. None of them are really grouped. Like Albert knows where they are because he put them there.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I'm trying to read as each one as they go, but as I'm reading them all, trying to find the right one.
We may need to group them. We may need to alphabetize.
Maybe that might be a
see.
plan.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
see.
But
we can work on that.
Anyway,
I'll get better.
I thank you. And you get support. You'll always get love. You know that. We love Mark T, Kim, Albert, and Tony. Insert soothing Tony drop here.
Today. Not today.
We have no drops today, apparently, but it's
I don't know what that one is.
Nonetheless, it's a pleasure to be with you all. So with that, it is time.
No.
Yeah, it has to happen. We must say goodbye at some point.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I do like the fact that we've received the rod of equity and mercy today. And remind me to get that started. I need the mock-up on the rod of equity and mercy mock-up. If anybody is a crafts person, wants to aid in that, we will do it together.
Thanks, Tony.
Oh.
Yeah.
See,
when
Kim,
you hit
playing that?
thank you, Tony,
It stops
resets
everything.
everything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I did that.
So what I would say is you see the challenges we have when we're on.
It's all on fire. I'm just turning off the light. We're done.
Liar. His hands are on fire.
I didn't want to. There's another bit of the rig that I can bring, so I can actually run more stuff myself, right, Tony? If I
we can come up with a plan. I'll come up with a plan for you.
Yeah, we'll figure something. But
yeah.
Anyway, thanks for all the help, and thanks for the tolerance. Good stuff. I mean, yeah, consider today. I thought some good information today, and a good show. We'll look forward to getting
hours? We did it, man. Good stuff.
We'll get the Trump verdict, I would think, in pretty short order, and we'll share it with you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Also, John Rothman returns tomorrow. So, Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Smash it like a boss. Hang on to your rod of equity and mercy. And Nikki Maduro over on the Nikki Maduro channel next. Until then, tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.